I talk Career Center, and I normally talk with DEI. Though most DEI departments are being scaled back now, so it's mainly like admissions and the Career Center. Well, with
Sure.
that said, it is 3:15, and we're going to respect Riley's time. She's definitely taking the time to enlighten us with her perspective and her insight about Notre Dame, and we thank you for that.
Yeah.
Welcome to our HW alumni at Notre Dame. Well, I should say HW alumni at series. Today we're at Notre Dame with Riley Bock, class of 21. What's up, Riley?
Not much. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Fantastic now that you're here. Um, Riley's going to give us a little bit about, or a lot, depending upon your perspective about Notre Dame, her experience, what she's thought, um, and of course, for you parents and you, kind of sort of innovative students, she will give us some of the how did you get in that you guys like also with questions 3 and 4 later on. So with that being said, Riley, you want to give us maybe a little introduction?
Yeah. So I'm Riley. I'm a senior here at Notre Dame. I graduated in 2021 from Harvard
Mm,
Westlake. Um, I'm a neuroscience and behavior major in the College of Science, and I've been on the pre-med track the whole time I've been here. And then I also have a supplemental major in what we call ESS here, which stands for Education, Schooling, and Society, um, which is basically Notre Dame's like undergraduate education program. And I've lived in the Notre Dame community is kind of unique in that we don't have any Greek life, but we do have like 35 different residence halls, men's and women's halls that have their own mascots. They have their own hall governments. So you get placed into one of those halls your freshman year. So I got placed into McGlynn Hall, um, where now as a senior, I'm an RA in that dorm. Yeah.
very cool. How you like the RA?
I like it. I have like 35 girls in my section. So it's very fun to get to know like younger girls in my dorm and, stay close with the ones who I already knew being in the dorm with them the past 2 years.
Sure, absolutely. That's fantastic. And it's a great way uh to really build that bond and community with the school that you're at because
Yeah.
again, like I said, there are so many younger people and yet people that go through and it's like, oh yeah, I still remember my RA and I graduated a long time ago, Riley. Did you stay at Notre Dame over the summer?
I was at Notre Dame this past summer. Yeah, I was doing research. I'm in a research lab here called the Cognition Learning and Development Lab. And we do like childhood math cognition research. Basically working on like developing elementary and middle school math curriculums, kind of through a neuroscience lens.
Hmm.
So I was doing research over the summer here. And yeah, also just hanging out with friends here. So fun summer.
Did you live in McGlynn over the summer?
I did not actually. I lived in one of my friends' off-campus houses. She's living there this school year, but I just subletted from her over the summer. So I got a little bit of a taste of the off-campus experience. At Notre Dame, you
Hmm.
are only allowed to live off campus your senior year. For your first 3 years, you have to live in the dorms. Um, so I stuck with living in the dorms as a senior, as an
Hmm.
RA, because you can only be an RA as a senior, which is also kind of unique to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so I got a little bit of a taste of what it would have been like to live off campus.
And what did you think about the off-campus living?
I think there's pros and cons. Like it is kind of fun to be able to, like cook for yourself and have your own space and stuff like that. But it is by far more convenient to live on campus, especially during the school year. I think a lot of my friends who do live off campus kind of miss being on campus and running into people. And there's definitely pros and cons.
Yeah. No, I imagine. Um, the you probably need a car too, right?
I don't have a car here,
Hmm.
living on campus, but I would say most people who live off campus do. I know a couple people who don't and who have been able to make it work with like carpooling and all that. We have some off-campus options that are definitely walkable from campus. So yeah,
Very, very cool. All right. Thank you very much. And with that said, we'll get started with, I guess, our regularly scheduled programming.
sure.
So the first question, and you actually kind of sort of already answered this, but there's another part to it. So your major and your college. Did you know what you were going to major in? Did you know you were going to be pre-med when you were applying to college? And if so, if you did know, why was Notre Dame the right choice for you? And if you didn't know, right, ended up becoming pre-med that while when you got to college, why was that major the right choice for you at Notre Dame, or why was Notre Dame the right school for you for that major?
Sure. So I did kind of come into Notre Dame knowing that I thought I wanted to be pre-med. I actually started off as a biology major, I think, over the summer, but I very quickly switched over to neuroscience here, my freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar, I would say, major-wise. The only real difference is that the neuroscience major is kind of more of a combination of like biology and psychology a little bit,
Sure.
in terms of the classes you take. So I was really enjoying my psychology classes, and I was in a psychology class my senior year at Harvard Westlake, and I ended up really loving that class. So I knew I wanted to continue with that a little bit more. Um, I would say being here, I went through the whole pre-med sequence. It's definitely I still am very interested in science, but I have my like late junior year and senior year kind of come off that pre-med track a little bit, mostly because of the supplemental major, education, schooling, and society that I picked up. I actually ended up committing to doing a master's degree program through Notre Dame after I graduate. Um,
Nice.
called the ACE Teaching Fellows Program, where it's a little bit like Teach for America, where I'll
Mm-hmm.
be teaching in an under-resourced Catholic school, um, somewhere in the country. I don't know yet. And doing that as a 2-year program after I graduate. So med school might still be down the line for me. We'll see. But I've also really kind of fallen in love with like the research that I do, so I could more see myself going down the like PhD route. But just generally in high school, I would say I really knew that I liked a lot of my science classes. Those were that was most exciting to me. I had really no idea that I was interested in education at all in high school, and it wasn't something that I became interested in until much later in college. So definitely there's room to switch at Notre Dame if you come in with a different process. My younger sister is also at Notre Dame and
Mm-hmm.
went to Harvard Westlake. She has a class right now, so she couldn't be on here. But she started off as I think she came into college undecided at Notre Dame, but is now she's a psychology major. So there's definitely room to switch around your first couple of years here. So
I
yeah.
mean, I love the options that you're giving yourself. First of all, as somebody who came to Harvard Westlake from being administrator, teaching at an under-resourced Catholic school, like you're going to love it. No matter where you are, the mission is solid, right? Even if
Mhm.
the tools aren't necessarily there to do what you need to, the work
Sure.
is so important, right? Secondly, you're giving yourself a practitioner route to go. If you go med school, you're giving yourself an academic route to go. If you decide to go PhD, and you're also giving yourself regular you. It's not probably not sexy at Harvard Westlake, but I would think many of you, because you're so academically inclined, you would love teaching. You would love it. Um, and that's always an option. I was finance law guy for 35 years of my life, or not 35 years, until I was 35. And then all of a sudden I get an education, and here I am now 8 years later, never been happier, Riley.
Yeah.
So I love the options. I love the flexibility you're giving yourself. I guess can you talk about Notre Dame School of Education a little bit?
Yeah, so Notre Dame in undergrad does not really have a school of education. Like you cannot just be an education major at Notre Dame. If you were really interested in doing that practically, we have the Notre Dame. Notre Dame is what we call like a tri-campus community. So we actually have two other schools that are kind of affiliated with Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
St. Mary's, which is an all-girls school, and Holy Cross, which is more of a like seminary.
Uh-huh.
There are some more formal education programs at those schools that you can take classes in if you're interested in. But on the undergraduate level, our ESS supplemental major is kind of the option that we have. And during that time, we really more talk about education from like a theory perspective. Um, and we kind of investigate issues with education. We talk about school choice. We talk about, you know, just we talk about the science of reading, things like that, just very like niche issues in education, more from a like theoretical perspective.
Sure.
And then if you are interested in like formally teaching, Notre Dame has a graduate teaching program called the ACE Teaching Fellows Program, where it's a cost-free master's degree from Notre Dame.
Wow.
And uh, that's where you get your like formal teaching experience and you would get like a certification and all that. So that's what I'll be doing after I graduate. So a lot of kids who are in the ESS minor do end up kind of going
Doing the
on to
grads, yeah,
teach
the
with
grad
ACE
school
Notre
program.
Dame. But yeah, we do not have like a formal school for education. It's more just under this general department called the Institute for Educational Initiatives that has a lot of different programs. They have principal academies. They have schools that focus on like Native American and Catholic schools, and they have lots of different programs, probably like 50. I couldn't possibly keep track of them. Yeah.
Sure. And that actually kind of dovetails very nicely into our next question. Now, you are STEM, pre-med track. You're from not only you from LA, super diverse city, but you went to Harvard Westlake, super diverse school, right? And now you're in the Midwest. Now you're in South Bend, right? And you're at Notre Dame. Can you talk about the differences that you see in diversity from obviously LA to a small Midwestern town, but maybe not as big coming from Harvard Westlake going to Notre Dame, a major like international university, and then talk about South Bend a little bit, the town and what it's like as far as
Yeah,
that's
sure.
concerned.
Yeah, so I mean, from a like racial diversity perspective, Notre Dame is definitely less diverse than Harvard Westlake
Yeah,
felt to me. And by the numbers, I'm sure that's also reflected.
yeah,
We definitely do have students of color here, many of them, but I would say it was a noticeable transition from Harvard Westlake. And that's not something that I would want to like understate. Um, I wouldn't want anyone to feel like surprised by that transition. I will say people are very, very welcoming here. Notre Dame does really represent every area of the country very well. So you really you will meet people from every state and from very different backgrounds than you grew up with. We have a lot of international students too. I think we have students from like 90 plus countries. I have friends from literally all over the country. I have a friend from South Dakota. She
yeah.
graduated in a high school class with 10 people. So you will definitely meet people from all walks of life. I would say politically, Notre Dame is far more diverse than
Yeah.
um, Harvard Westlake, which can definitely be like intimidating, I think, when you go to Harvard Westlake, which is typically like an echo chamber a little bit sometimes of
Mm-hmm.
like political ideas. But I think it's actually a really good strength of Notre Dame that we do have students kind of from different backgrounds and political perspectives. It really does teach you kind of how to have a civil and productive conversation with people you may disagree with. So that's actually been something that I've really enjoyed about Notre Dame is I think you kind of get to talk more with people who you might not necessarily agree with surface level on issues. But you kind of realize like you have a lot more in common. And I think that that's a really good life skill to develop to be able to talk and learn from people who you disagree with. So I think that's a real strength of Notre Dame diversity
Mm-hmm.
wise. Um, I think probably the biggest thing to talk about with Notre Dame is that Notre Dame is a Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that really informs kind of the way that they shape their admissions profile a little bit. I would say about 80% of the students who go here identify as Catholic. I am not Catholic. So I wouldn't want anyone to think that that's like you have to be Catholic to go to Notre Dame or you have to be Catholic to get in. You certainly don't. I feel like I'm trying to think of the other Harvard Westlake alumni who I know who went here, and I don't think like any of them are Catholic, to be
Yeah.
honest. Um, so it's definitely not something that is like required, but it is something that really shapes like everything that Notre Dame does. Like all of the classes that you take here are very informed by the beliefs of like Catholic social teaching, which kind of means that they just believe that like everything that you are doing in your classes should be for like a greater purpose and should be
Sure.
to do good in the world. So they're always going to talk about like, in a finance class, like how can we use finance to, positively impact the world? How can we do good in business? How can we use scientific innovation to better the world? So it definitely is a major part of Notre Dame. It's not something you don't need to be Catholic to go here, and it's something that you can, if you don't want to engage with that at all while you're here, that's totally possible. You're not like going to be forced to go to mass or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, it is definitely something that will come up a lot. So if Notre Dame is very, very welcoming to people of like all faith traditions, they encourage students to really pursue like whatever faith they have. It doesn't need to be Catholic. They would encourage maybe somebody who's Jewish to like lean into their faith, whatever that means for them. Um, and they're very supportive of that. But I would say like if the idea of like religion in general is something that is very off-putting to you, I would say Notre Dame might not be the perfect fit because it is something that is very, very much a part of what they do here.
Yeah. And South Bend.
Oh yeah, South Bend. So South Bend is it's in the very northern part of Indiana. We're about 5 minutes from the Michigan border, and about a 90-minute drive from Chicago. So South Bend is a um more like working class town for sure. It used to be very involved in like the steel industry a long time ago, and a lot of those steel plants have closed. So it's kind of a rebuilding Midwestern city, I would say. The Midwestern charm is definitely here. People are very nice and
Hmm.
kind. Directly around Notre Dame, we have a lot of like fun little streets for students to shop on. We have a Trader Joe's, we have an Urban Outfitters, we have, we have a Chipotle, we have lots of things like nearby. And then kind of within a 10-minute drive, we have more of the bigger stores that you'd be used to, like Targets, Walmarts, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, definitely typical Midwest town. It's very cold here in the winters, but we get beautiful falls and springs and summer, and it's very pretty in the winter too.
Yeah.
But you definitely get all four seasons here, which is kind of something I was looking for coming to college too.
Mhm.
I was thought all four seasons would be fun, and I still stand by that. I think all four are
Yeah.
fun, even on the cold winter days.
No, I imagine it was. If you're going to Indiana for school, you're going to be prepared for it to be cold.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And then finally, on this question, your classes, and I'm particularly interested in women in STEM because it's been split.
yeah,
We talked with Will Fullerson and we talked with, I forget her name, at Harvard and Brown. They were like, they were STEM and their classes were very heavily male. And they were like, the school is addressing it, but like they felt it. And then
yeah,
Dartmouth, we talked with along with Dartmouth, and she said their classes were about 50-50, male, female, and she was an engineer, which, was impressive. What is the breakdown gender wise of your classes, your focus, your concentration? Uh,
yeah. I would say STEM classes here are very 50-50 for the most
yeah,
part.
okay.
I've never really noticed a difference in that. There might be certain majors where there's slight differences. I could imagine that maybe like I would say math majors might tend to be more heavily male from just what I've noticed. But other than that, like I've never noticed really an imbalance in any of my classes. I've felt like it's been very easy to participate and have a space as a woman. So yeah, I that's definitely not a huge issue here.
Okay.
Uh,
That's a good something I like to hear for sure.
yeah,
Um, okay. Now we get into the nuts and bolts.
sure.
So I want you to think back now. You're a senior in college now. I need you to think back to the summer after your sophomore year at Harvard Westlake and the summer after your junior year at Harvard Westlake. What did you do?
Okay. It's been a while. But okay, so my sophomore year, um, I think I just worked as like a camp counselor, I'm pretty sure. I was or not, maybe not a camp counselor, but my old elementary school that I used to go to, they have like a summer camp. And then kind of like the end of their school year uh overlapped a little bit with my Harvard Westlake summer. And I think I just worked as a camp counselor for the most part there. Um, yeah, that's primarily what I did. I think I did that for maybe 5 weeks or so over the summer. Nothing too intense. It was just like a day camp kind of thing, and I was just helping out with elementary school kids. Um, and then the summer after my junior year, that was a little bit weirder because that was kind of really in the height of COVID.
COVID, yeah.
Um, but I actually did that summer. I was supposed to do kind of an in-person internship with I think a Harvard was like parent or alumni, I can't remember, um, who was a facial plastic surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up doing like a virtual internship with her, where I was kind of editing and writing some like medical blog posts for her website,
Right.
about like facial nerves. So
Nice.
I ended up kind of doing it a little more virtual. But I did mostly just a little bit of like writing that summer.
Mhm.
But yeah, definitely a little weird because of COVID, but
Sure.
that's what I ended up doing. Yeah.
But I think it's important, particularly our students, to know that it wasn't, and even though it was COVID, so it impacted things in some regard. You didn't have you didn't feel that you had to do the super duper major fancy internship to get
Oh,
into the elite
for
school.
sure not. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think that Notre Dame in particular, I feel like they want to see you just doing what you're like interested in, and they expect that you're doing normal high school things. They're not going to expect that you have some crazy internship or whatever. Like if you're just babysitting over the summer, like that's fine.
Yeah.
They know that you're in high school. They know that you're busy. They want to see that you're playing sports and doing the things that you're interested in. You don't need to be like shooting for the moon, I think, with every crazy activity, but just do what you're
Yeah.
interested in.
Sure. And I think that's the best advice to do. If you do what you're interested in, the
Yeah,
things you end up writing about, it's going to shine through as opposed to something that you think that you have to do in order to get into a college if you're choosing, right?
absolutely.
Good. The next one is kind of sort of that subject matter. And so far, so good. We've had everybody kind of sort of share the state secrets. Do you mind telling us what you wrote about in your Notre Dame specific essay and then your Common App essay?
Yeah, sure. So for my Common App essay, I had this kind of like long extended metaphor that I wrote about pottery. So I did pottery at Harvard Westlake, and I kind of wrote about like pottery is kind of a metaphor for like reworking the clay of some of the like friendships that I had
Mm,
like early high school to later high school. Like I had a little bit of like a friendship breakup, if you
yeah.
will, with a friend in my life. And I think I my like metaphor was basically that I was like fighting with the clay for a long time to get it centered on the wheel. And then I think I actually came to the conclusion that was like sometimes you got to know when it's like time to scrap it and start over and like rework the clay. And so that was kind of what I wrote about. Very long metaphor.
Mhm.
Um, and then for my Notre Dame specific essays, there were a lot of little supplements. From what I remember, the Notre Dame essays are very focused on kind of like community service and like things what they call like doing good in the world
Mhm.
a little bit. So I did a little bit of high school volunteering in high school at Cedar Sinai. And I wrote about my experience there and like working with patients there. And that a little bit of community service. Um, I think they had a question about I believe that they had a question that was like about a more specific, like how do you um talked about like the meaning of God or something. So it was a little bit more specifically religious. And it was like 50 words, so it wasn't even anything crazy. But I think mostly they asked a lot about activities and like how those activities kind of were done for like a greater purpose. So I talked about that. I talked about a family friend of mine who I ended up, she was like older, and I would go over to her house sometimes after school and like just talk with her. So
Mm,
nothing crazy, but more just about like the small actions you do and even that academic actions that you have, and kind of the deeper meaning behind them, if that makes sense. I know that they switch them up from year to year, but I would say that's kind of a general theme of Notre Dame
yeah, yeah,
is what's the like community service portion.
bingo. Well, that's what I was going to say. Community generally, it seems to be over the last 5 years, and I've collected a bunch of these statements from a bunch of schools that, Harvard Westlakers want to go to. And it seems to be the general theme pretty much since 2019, 2000, even 20, with the pandemic or the drop in the background, is how your identity impacts your community. And then you demonstrate that by the kinds of sort of experiences that you've had. Why
Mhm.
normally it's that professional one or the one the summer of your junior year or whatever. But
Mhm.
they can be even earlier. And it seems to be over the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a particular focus on that community piece and how your identity will impact the community you plan on joining. You demonstrate that through the work that you've done. So I
For
think
sure.
that's definitely been consistent over the last 5 years. Okay, Riley, we're at our final question, and then I think Ryan's the only one on. So if Ryan will have an opportunity for Q&A, but if he doesn't have any questions after you answer this one, I implore you to give a little wisdom to our current seniors who are stressing like crazy right now. uh, but we'll get there. Our fifth and final question. You can actually include HW in this too. Do you think Notre Dame / Harvard Westlake has prepared you for life after graduation, right? So did HW prepare you for Notre Dame? Do you think Notre Dame is preparing you for your life after it?
Yeah. I would say Harvard Westlake preparing me for Notre Dame, I definitely felt prepared. I think there was definitely a little bit of a rumor floating around Harvard Westlake that was like, oh, college is going to be a like a cakewalk after you come from Harvard Westlake, which in some ways is true. Like I feel like I had less of a learning curve than a lot of people did in college. But that's not to say that just because you went to Harvard Westlake, like organic chemistry is going to be the easiest thing you've ever done. Um, but I felt very academically prepared. I think Harvard Westlake students tend to have very good like metacognitive skills. Like you really know how to study, you really know what you don't know, and you know what to do about it if you feel
Yeah,
like you're lost. And I think Harvard Westlake kids, we have a very good and tough English department, and you are far better writers than you know. And you will realize that when you get to college and you write things and do very well on those
yeah,
assignments. So I felt very well prepared in that regard. Notre Dame preparing me well for life, I would say absolutely. I felt like very academically challenged here. And they've really kind of encouraged me to pursue different interests, and academically, but also I think Notre Dame really prepares you to have a life outside of academics. They promote that kind of through our residence halls and the communities that you build through that. With we do random freshman roommates, you have no pick, and kind of forcing you to get along with people in your residence halls and keep up those relationships. I think that's a very good life skill. And then we have a very fun football team here,
okay.
which ranked eighth in the AP poll. So hopefully we'll be in the playoffs this year. So they really encourage you to go to Notre Dame football games and join intramural sports and do things that you're interested in, even if it's not always for some like academic purpose. I went to the Notre Dame Career Center this past week, and they were talking about how um, they did this like interview with a bunch of Fortune 500 companies who were talking about summer interns that they'd worked with at a lot of top 20 colleges. And in like the interview questions, a lot of times they'd ask like, oh, who were the smartest interns? Who were the, you know, who were the most prepared in the field? And a lot of times those would go to like Harvard or Stanford. But on the question that was which intern would you hire back, Notre Dame was like overwhelmingly the chosen
Oh,
answer because apparently companies felt that like Notre Dame graduates were like really in the community and they were really
yes.
trying to like better the companies that they were working at and not seeing everything as like a stepping stone
Mhm.
to the next thing. And I think Notre Dame teaches you that skill very well of like investing in the communities that you're in, really trying to walk with kindness and effort in everything that you do. Um, and yeah, so I would say career-wise, I definitely feel very prepared. We have a huge alumni network at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame graduates are the happiest people in the world to talk to Notre Dame students. Notre Dame grads love Notre Dame more than anything in the world, so they are always happy to talk to current undergraduates and put them
Sounds
on good career
sounds
paths.
sounds similar to a school I know. When I work, yeah, alums very eager to give back and help those following their paths, which is great. Well, Riley, that was awesome. Thank you. Ryan, I see that you're on the line. Do you have any questions?
Oh, hi, I'm Ryan. I'm a junior. I'm also on the bus right now, so you might hear LA
Okay.
traffic. But I was just wondering, what's the best thing at Notre Dame? And then my second question is like, what's something you would change at Notre Dame if you could?
Sure. Um, best thing. I mean, best thing in my opinion are the people, like by far. I think Notre Dame truly has some of the like kindest people I've met. They're so passionate about what they do, and I really do feel like the Notre Dame application process kind of drags this out of people and really filters and selects for people who are really interested in like supporting a greater good and doing everything for like a larger purpose. And I think that is so reflected in like when you're talking to people, everyone's passionate about very different things, but they really have an eye for community service and being kind to people that they meet. So I would say the people for sure. I also love the dorm systems here that we have. It really replaces Greek life very well. And it kind of takes away that like scare factor, I think, of Greek life that I was a little bit nervous about coming in of the rushing process and all that. With at Notre Dame, you're just randomly assigned to a dorm, and we have a lot of the similar things that Greek life has, like hall governments, and we have sports teams and a lot of like hall culture, but without the stress I think of rushing sometimes. So I would say a lot of people feel like they have a really good community in the dorm that they've been placed into. Yeah, and people love their dorms. Whenever I talk to a Notre Dame graduate who's, in their like 60s, they still tell me what dorm they were in and all that. Um, then the thing I would change, I mean, I really love Notre Dame, but I would say I do wish that Notre Dame was more diverse for sure. I think that Notre Dame kind of has to pick in a way. I would say they really are committed to having like a large percentage of students go here who are Catholic, but that kind of like bottlenecks them into losing out on some other um, like racial, ethnic, cultural groups that maybe are not Catholic or not as predominantly Catholic. So I think that we have some overrepresented populations here just based on that Catholicism factor. Um, but yeah, so I think they're kind of at a choosing place right now where they have to kind of pick, like, are we going to still really stick firm in this wanting to have a lot of Catholic students here? Or are we going to make a larger effort to maybe take more students who aren't Catholic, but are be more diverse? So I think I would prefer that they take students from more more diverse backgrounds. But it's definitely something, it's definitely kind of like a point of tension right now at the university. I think that they really are doing a lot to um, bring more students from like underrepresented communities.
Thank you.
That's good. Those are
Yeah,
good
of
questions. Those are
course.
good questions, Ryan. Thank you for the answer, Riley. And if there are any more questions for from Ryan, Riley, kind of give us a closing statement, maybe address it to some nervous seniors and some soon to be nervous juniors. So shout out, Ryan. I see you. About this whole college process. And you can, I mean, obviously you can big up Notre Dame if
Yeah.
or
Um,
you know, sure, but we do this to serve those finalists. And man, I see some nervous. This is my third year. I've seen some nervous seniors 3 years deep into it.
of course. Yeah, I mean, it's a very nerve-wracking process. There's like no way around it. It's kind of I would not go back and want to do it again. Um, I would say trust that you will get into college. It will be okay. You will end every college sweatshirt day. I think it's good to remind yourself that like everyone is going to a good school.
Yeah.
Like, and it may not have been like their top choice, but it might really be where they were meant to be. And that's okay. And I would say this is probably more directed at like juniors, but a little bit seniors too in their choice is I think really stick with that like fit. When I feel like your deans will talk about all the time, like make sure you find the school that has the right fit. Like what's the fit that you want in a school? Um, I would say really come back to that idea because once you actually start applying, it's very easy to get into the rankings and oh, what does this school have that this one doesn't? And really kind of get into that comparing mode. But I think it's really good to like go back to thinking what is really going to make me happy because truly you are not gonna, no one is gonna ask once you go to college, everyone is gonna be very happy to be there. Like no
Yeah.
one, I was the only kid in my grade who went to Notre Dame. I was one of the only who'd applied in the last few years. It really was not a popular school when I
Yeah,
was
there's
a
about six of you in the last 5 years.
yeah, so it was not it was a little more off the beaten path, I think. And that got a little bit of reaction from people from Harvard Westlake. They were like, "Oh, why did you choose there? Why are you going there?" It does not matter when you get to college. No one is going to care where your high school classmates went. So and neither will anyone in your future. So you have to kind of do what's best for you. Think about like do I want to go to like do I want to work super hard academically like in college? I think it's a completely fair choice to say, you know what? I'm done with all the academic rigor that I felt like I just want to go to a school where I can, you maybe focus more on like big fun football games and like
Yeah.
clubs. I think that's fine. You're going to get a good education wherever you go. So I think come back to those things outside of academics and think about what's really going to make you happy. Is that going to be a school with a lot of clubs? Is it going to be a school with a certain sports team that you really want to go to, or a certain campus size that you're really interested in? So I think definitely come back to that fit model, and that's why I ended up picking Notre Dame. Is I really wanted a school that kind of had a mix of like academic rigor, but also like fun sports programs. And I really did admire Notre Dame's commitment to community service. So I felt like Notre Dame was the right fit for me, like in that fit process. But it would have been very easy to, pick another school just because it was higher in the rankings or because I felt like other people at Harvard Westlake thought I should pick this other school. I think you got to do what's right for you. Don't compare yourself to other people in your class because in as crazy as this sounds, like you're going to be graduating in a very short time and then it's not going to matter anymore.
Yeah.
So do what's best for you.
Yeah. Really, really, really good words of advice there. I forgot one thing. Where else were you thinking about other than Notre Dame?
Yeah. I was looking at like I looked at Dartmouth, I
Mhm.
looked at Michigan.
Yep.
What else did I look? I looked at I think I looked at Ohio State briefly as like
Okay.
I looked at this is a good question. Where else did I look? It's been so long. I looked at a couple of the UC schools for
Or
sure. And then I looked at Brown, I looked at Boston College, I looked at
Yeah,
Villanova.
sure. These make
So
sense. The
yeah.
grouping. Ohio State's a little bit different than the other ones,
I
but the
think
other
that was like a I think that was like a I basically decided like for me Ohio State was more of a safety school.
sure.
And I think I decided that I would rather go to like a big state school
Yeah,
as a safety school than some random like
yeah. Smaller liberal arts college.
small
Yeah,
liberal arts school. Both are totally fair choices. Like I'm not I'm not knocking the small liberal arts school, but I think I wanted like a bigger school. If I got to that point. So yeah.
wholly understand. Well, Riley, thank you so much. Uh,
Yeah.
Riley, her profile's up on the platform. I think I saw you on LinkedIn also.
Yeah.
So you can contact her either through the platform or via LinkedIn. For those of you who are still middle school or 10th, 11th grade, you can come to me. If you want to get to Riley, I'll give you her contact info and things like that. Other than that, hey, we're out of here 4 minutes early. You got your Monday afternoon slash Monday evening to go. Cannot thank you enough for giving us this view of Notre Dame that is sorely needed.
Yeah,
Sorely,
of course. Happy to.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Riley. Ryan, questions were wonderful. This recording will be up in the resources section of the platform before midnight tonight. It's Monday Night Football. My priorities, Riley. But it's the best part about the West Coast. I can watch the game. It's like 8 o'clock over here, and I can still post that. I can still run.
Exactly. There you go.
All right. Thank you so much again, Riley. Take care, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
this was HW Alumni at Notre Dame.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Take care.
much.
Bye.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for volunteering your time. It's
Yeah, of
invaluable.
course. Happy
Invaluable.
to. Cool,
Take
cool.
care.
Have a good rest of your night.
You too.
Bye.